Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Talking Point. Sean Michael Small here alongside Mr. Keaton Shah. And it's a beautiful morning. Fortunately, not dark and gloomy. And Keaton, unfortunately, the traffic continues. My continuous war with traffic these mornings has been an interesting endeavor, but so far it hasn't affected me, I think, knock on wood.
You're very fortunate, actually. Good morning. And welcome to the program. Good to see you. Good that you're with us this morning. Well, I can't see you. I'm just assuming that you're looking at Sean and I. So, good for you. Anyway, Sean, you're right. The traffic, what more can we say about the traffic? I'll just use an example of last night. I was on my way home, very late actually. And the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, there are two officers standing on Ryson Road, between Sackville Street and Ryson Road. They blocked from there, right? So they had this big board with an arrow pointing that you have to divert. It's now 3 lanes of traffic on Ryson Road into 2 lanes of traffic on Sackville, and then you get 1 lane of traffic on Richmond, right? There was no police at all assisting with the situation, guiding traffic. There was no police at all. So, when I hear our good friend, the acting ASP, media ambassador, speaking, all good intentions, this is what they stand for, this is what they want, and this is what they hope for, but it's not what they actually do. So,
I think a lot of our problems come back to management and money. Mismanagement leads to shortages of money because we're not using it as effectively as possible. Now, it's a beautiful day. Traffic seems to be like just an ongoing thing, and I think a lot of us take it for granted. And there are a lot of important stories that is still ongoing that we potentially might be taking for granted. But one thing on Wednesdays that we do not take for granted, that is the participation of the former Minister of Finance and attorney at law, legal scholar extraordinaire. If you see a lawyer on television, she probably taught this lawyer everything that lawyer knows. This is, of course, Mrs. Karen Shishera. Good morning, Karen.
Good morning to you, Sean. Good morning to you, Keaton. And good morning to your viewers. As usual, happy to be here on Wednesday, which they call the hump day, because it is the middle of the week, and that is the reason that has always been given to me, and we will stick with that explanation. So
Karen,
happy to be here with you.
Are you 100% sure about that explanation, or is it just somebody was telling you that that's the reason behind it?
No, you know why I feel confident that I can say it? Because they say it on CNN and other respected broadcasting. That's why I feel say the term. And they all say it on a Wednesday. So I have to expect that is like the camel, you're reaching the top and now you're going down.
Okay,
so I'm sticking with that explanation.
Seriously, a legal scholar and a legal mind. I'm sticking with that explanation.
No, she's right. She has seen precedent, in a larger market. She's like, precedent has already been determined. I am safe. Just like
very good. I like the language. Precedent. I love that language.
Karen, it's good to see you once more. Thank you for gracing us with your presence. All white this morning and a wonderful smile. Karen, as we start the program, of course, when we speak to you, oftentimes we focus a lot on the economy and energy. And I know that this morning there's an opportunity to actually analyze what Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley would have mentioned in his press conference on Monday. Now, he spoke very much of now being a very critical time and the fact that the government has
gotten stuck.
Well, I'm hoping that we can sort that out.
That.
But if you can hear me, that's all that matters for now. Hopefully the video feed will fix itself shortly. But the Prime Minister said the government has been working overtime to deal with what I call an energy crisis. And he's stating that the government is going to continue working overtime. Now is critical because we can start seeing the consequences of inaction from as early as 2026. And he spoke very much about ProMon's continued investment in Trinidad and Tobago, as well as his meetings with British Petroleum and Shell. Karen, what did you make of the Prime Minister's speech?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, because of their poor implementation over the last 7 years, and in particular, I think one of the journalists from another media house did ask the Minister of Finance, why is it that every year for the last 7 years you get the production numbers wrong? Because the problem is prices are high, but the production numbers are way, way down. If you go to CSO, you go Central Bank, and they give you some detailed data, you have seen how much natural gas production has gone down. And then for them to be speaking, at least the headline to be speaking about Train 1 as if it were part of the deal with putting the 2, 3, and 4 together when that is in fact not the case, I am going to be a little very cautious in my outlook. I mean, I'm glad to hear that Colibri is producing gas since I think March. I was also pleased to hear from the Prime Minister that instead of using one pricing for our oil and gas, they were going to use a combination of European and American price and European and other pricing in order to get a better price for our energy products, which would give us more of a revenue take. So those are good things to hear about. Unfortunately, I think that one would be reasonable to have a sense of cynicism and a sense of, well, let's see how it plays out. But if it does, it's good for the country.
Well, for those who might not have heard what the Prime Minister had to say at his last press conference, we do have a short clip. Of course, we can't show everything, but he did have some he had an interesting point to make, I think, that Karen was speaking about. So let's take a look at that clip before I make my point.
Proman has invested in upstream gas production via a new subsidiary called De Novo. The government of Trinidad and Tobago is encouraging these investments to ensure that all small pools and I dare say stranded gas fields are exploited at this time. It is our intention to extract every molecule of gas that is available to us, bring it to shore, bring it to plant, and take it to market. That is the government's position. And if we do not make the decisions that are to be made now and the investment that are to be made now, the diagram shows that by 2026, 2027, 2028, the levels of gas that would be available in Trinidad and Tobago, if no new improvements are had, will have far-reaching consequences for government revenues and, by I dare say, for the quality of life of all the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Discussions for opportunities for Trinidad and Tobago to access financing for new projects, including new technologies and financing of green energy in the energy sector, and the possibility of investments in alternative energy generation and energy storage. These are areas of potential involvement and growth, expansion and diversification going forward.
Now, my issue with this whole thing is the fact that, you know, when you listen to the government report on the economy and you look at, on the surface, their messaging with regards to the economy and energy, it seems as though they're like, everything's going to be all right, everything's going to be all right. So now that we need to shift gears, it's almost as if it's too jarring. You're now telling us, oh, wait, it's running out. But I'm pretty sure indicators to show this probably would have been, you know, apparent for a while now. And I get it that maybe you don't want to cause panic, but there has to be a better way than just everything's going to be all right, everything's going to be all right. Now we have to change, like just all of a sudden we need to change gears. And to me, changing gears in the messaging to some extent runs the risk of potentially either causing panic or people he just talking, but he will say whatever and why believe him. Mm-hmm. Do I think that...
Can I just say something before you turn back to Keaton? Because I didn't hear everything Keaton said, but in the Central Bank report for quarter first quarter 2022, they said that the gas production had gone down by -5%. So we actually seen gas production falling. We knew a lot of the deep rounds were not taken up. And the last one I wanted to make, the question that I've asked, and I wish it would be answered, is with regard to ProMan. We got a judgment. I was a witness in it, as representing the former Minister of Finance who did the MOU. And basically, the CLF and CLICO, which are held by the central bank under Section 44 powers, won the case. And it said that the deal that CLICO, that Lawrence made on the 3rd of February was inconsistent with the MOU, that he sold those shares to ProMan, which was the 51% majority shareholding in ProMan, Trinidad and Barbados, and he sold it at a great undervalue, that he is to return, that ProMan is to return those shares to these companies which are under the control of the government, and the difference in the price of 46 million is to be offset by the real price that should have been paid for it. So I can't understand what is the conversation with ProMan. Do we own ProMan? Or 51% share in ProMan? I'm just at a loss.
Well, I must admit, Karen, that I expressed similar thoughts back when I first started hearing about ProMan, and then the Novo. I'm like, you know, is this a new company that Trinidad and Tobago has now established? But the Prime Minister himself acknowledged that, you know, production is not what it used to be. We don't focus on oil anymore. We're focusing more on natural gas. I think the Prime Minister also said we used to produce, I think, roughly 4.2 billion cubic feet. Now we're at 2.9. So he's acknowledging that there's a decline. But it ties back into what Sean is stating. All the time, we have been hearing that, you know what, we're stable, we're doing well, higher energy prices is actually helping rebound the Trinidad and Tobago economy. And then leading up to the budget, because bear in mind the budget is in 2 weeks' time, the Prime Minister had this press conference, and I appreciate him communicating with us, you know, speaking about his meetings as to what took place. But you have to wonder exactly what is the truth. To now come and state, listen, what he said on Monday was actually the opposite of what he's been preaching and what the Minister of Finance has been preaching, and even what Stuart Young stated in that CNN interview. It is the complete opposite. So I agree with you, Sean. I agree with you, Karen. My focus now is that what does this mean? Is this the Prime Minister hinting at what is to come in the budget? Because I remember in 2008, Sean, I remember in 2008, big article, front page of all the newspapers, oil to run out in 12 years' time, right? We are now beyond 12 years.
I mean, the estimate might not be wrong, right?
Maybe that's precisely why we no longer focus on oil and it's just mainly natural gas, because even he said stranded pools of natural gas. So again, I am rather confused, but then and again, every time I listen to the government, you know, it just makes me a little less knowledgeable, I suppose.
Well, so, and herein lies the issue, right? The indicators weren't necessarily hidden from us, because the reports that production levels were falling, that was in the papers for a while now. It could be that they were hoping to stave off disaster, right? But now you're scrambling now to try to do the prep work to get people ready, potentially, for a situation that is going to come out of the blue for a lot of them, because they weren't thinking about this. They're not ready for this. And who they're going to blame for this when you're ambushing them? Because, like I said, it's not as though they hid production levels. It's that they just didn't include it in their communication, right? So then, interestingly enough, if they're telling us, don't listen to the economists, don't listen to these people, don't listen to the outside commentators. But the outside people, not in government, not in politics, were probably the ones who are looking at the articles. Hey, production levels dropped. Hey, what does this mean? Supply here. BP wants to pull out. Their gas production levels have dropped. We had that article either a month ago or a couple of months ago, right? the government itself is not communicating with us, right? They're not letting us know, okay, what's going on. So again, it comes back down to when they have the budget presentation now, the cynics are going to come out, right? And it could be, this is the sad part, it could be like, look, it was unavoidable. Like I said, maybe they were trying to stave off disaster, get the dragon fruit production, get deals with, new deals with BP, new deals with whoever, Shell, right?
Delivered nationwide. Kiss Enriched Bread.
Fill your day with love. Celebrate and enjoy your life with a fully electric or hybrid Mini. Now available at LaFast Motors, Port of Spain or San Fernando.
Rise to the occasion with Cocky Lucky. Exclusively sold at the Big Mike Wellness Center.
Number 19 Market Street in Aruka. Contact 346-26 or 338-7775.
Christmas is coming. The Retail Warehouse Christmas Village is back with great deals. So check us in store or online today.
Your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Welcome back to Talking Point. I'm Keaton Shaw alongside Mr. Sean Michael Small, and Karen is with us via Zoom. There were slight interruptions during the first segment, but as we were speaking over the break, let's continue with that. This continued fascination with Proman. Two things I am looking at. One, I suppose it's because Trinidad and Tobago, it seems as though, based off our research, the majority of Proman's assets are in Trinidad and Tobago.
I'm not sure if majority, but a significant, more than 50%.
I think,
right? I think that's safe to say, right?
Which would be the majority.
Well, okay, yeah.
Right? And then,
it could be a simple
you
majority.
You went to school, Keaton.
It could be a simple majority, Keaton. Our government has taught us the meaning of the concept of simple majority, huh?
Anyway, yes, okay. But anyway, also you think about it. Good trying of a comeback. But anyway, at the same time, if that's the case, then it's Trinidad and the Prime Minister mentioned Proman's continued investment. Is that Trinidad and Tobago is investing its own money back into Trinidad and Tobago, And then the second point that I'm looking at is, are we now looking at Proman more than any other company such as BP and Shell? Because BP and Shell no longer have investor confidence in Trinidad and Tobago. Karen, I don't know if you may share the same questions that I have, but quite frankly, I'm a bit confused, and maybe you can help educate me a bit more.
Well, I have the same questions too. I did read the Prime Minister's breakdown of his 3 visits with BP, Shell, and Proman, and he does seem to put Proman at the top of the list. And as I said, there was a judgment delivered in last year, I think September 2021, in which the Proman was ordered by the court to return the shares that had been surreptitiously and illegally transferred by Lawrence Dupre in breach of his trust with CLICO, and also his shares with CL, which amounted to 51% shareholding. And we have not heard anything else, and I don't know that there was any appeal. So that means, shouldn't we own most of Proman now back to where it was before under CL Financial and CLICO? That's the number one question. The second thing is, and I mean, I think Sean has said this so many times, and you know, that's why there's the lack of confidence in the economy. If you look at the inflation rate, which you may think, why am I going to there? But when you look at countries, the number one issue for them is the inflation rate, because even if they increase salaries, if the inflation rate is higher than what the salaries, your purchasing power, then you're just entering into a spiral. And this is what's happening in the UK. They've increased salaries, but the inflation rate is so high because of food and energy prices that the inflation rate in terms of food is more than 3.6% more than the increase in salaries. So to me, I think the government needs to be focusing on dealing with inflation, which shows a lack of consumer confidence because it's so low. Yes, that's why it's so low, but focus on what we call the food inflation, where the bill on food import is unsustainable. Mm-hmm. And that is where so that for the Prime Minister to come and talk now as if it's had a eureka moment and a bulb has gone off in his head, you know, like, you know, it's so, you know, do we believe that? We've been saying it so long, we've been saying it years. So why are you now reacting? It's just such poor implementation, lack of proactivity, and I would just use 2 examples, and before I complete, I use these 2 examples. The Commission of Inquiry into Paria, if that's any example of this government's preparation and implementation, where we know where we're going, where we are going there. And if the government's solution to the scrap metal dealers is to give them subsidies, when these subsidies account for 29 billion, transfer and subsidies account for 29 billion of government's revenue and 9 billion of their salaries, that's eating up everything. So where is the government going in terms of making investment to take us out of our dependency on oil and especially gas, where your production, I don't care what, you don't know what the prices will be 2 years from now?
Well, Karen, excellent point. That very final point in relation to transfers and subsidies. This is where I turn to my co-host, because Sean, we've seen that they're going to put a cap on the fuel subsidy. Mm-hmm. But yet, and they probably have to, because they realize, hold on, we're going to have increased social expenditure due to the cost of living and the entire situation on the ground here in Trinidad and Tobago. But that point on the scrap iron dealers, right, just to use that as one example, if you're closing down an industry which provided employment and also contributed to the economy, there were aspects of crime involved which I thought could have been dealt with by a stringent national security apparatus, but clearly they can't think about any policies. This government only knows how to shut down things. If that is the case, you're shutting down a money-making industry to now go and give them transfers and subsidies, which makes no sense to me. I don't know what the Minister of Finance, Colin Imbert, was thinking, or if he was thinking at all, when he had that discussion with the Minister of National Security and probably the Prime Minister as well.
It comes back down to a simple concept that most people overlook or don't want to hear because they get caught up in the bubble, right? and the simple The simple concept is this, ironically speaking, we want simple solutions. Oh, we have a problem with the economy. Who do we blame? Well, we blame this party, or we blame the previous party. And while, yes, politicians have a lot to do with it, I think it's a combination of more than just politicians. It's how our bureaucracy works. It's how our administrative functions, paperwork, inefficiency of the public service, inefficiency of not just the politicians and how they implement and their abilities to come up with strategies, but then all the way down the line. Why do I say that? Because you kind of see the same song and dance on multiple levels, not just from one party or the other. And it's easy for supporters to say, hey, blame this party. We want simple solutions, but the situation that we're faced with now, right? We've seen it before, lack of implementation. Karen's example with Paria is the best because in my mind, if I am a political operator, if I am a political advisor, if I am a public relations advisor, right? If I am any sort of advisor with any sort of brain to the government, I would be hopefully shouting from the mountaintops, hey, you can't just pass the buck on to somebody else. It doesn't matter if the office of the president had the main responsibility, or Paria had whoever had it. You are the government. Make sure it gets done, whether formally or informally, right?
So can I just tell you this quickly? I have to say this quickly.
Go ahead.
You're talking about blaming other governments, but how about a minister blaming his other ministers?
When
the question was let me tell you, when the question was put to him that for the 7 years that you have been Minister of Finance, you have always gotten the production numbers wrong. Do you know what the Minister of Finance answered? He said, well, we rely on what Energy Ministry gives us, so throw one of his colleagues under the bus. But not only that, the deceased Franklin Can, he then says, well, now we expect that those numbers will be accurate. So what is he saying? That Franklin Can, who cannot speak for himself, who is deceased, is responsible for giving him wrong numbers, and he is not responsible. So every ministry that gives him information, he is going to say, it's not my fault. Is that collective responsibility? So we don't even have to go outside of the government for the blaming. I mean, for a Minister of Finance to sit down there and do that to a colleague minister who's deceased and take no collective responsibility, I mean, it says a lot about him.
And the problem is, because there are so many, it's not one big villain that we have to point out and get rid of and then everything's going to be solved. We have a lot of systemic problems, right? And the people who are elected don't seem to have the will, for whatever reason, to solve it. And the voting public don't seem to have the will to demand it being solved. And we end up in this mess because you could have made the same moves. There are a lot of times where I say this, the government could have made the same decisions, but how they communicate with the public makes a big difference on how we perceive it.
Now, if I may just add, Sean, your point on advisors. In Trinidad and Tobago, in order to be an advisor, you don't have to have brains. You have to have a mouth. And clearly that's what qualifies as an advisor.
Well, I know some of them are ignored, right? They're hired, they sit in the seat, and they're ignored because they're not a yes man, or they're just not saying what the big boys want to hear.
See, this is the thing. The big boys want yes men. So if they stay there,
or the big girls,
you know, and they're not yes mans, they're gone automatically. And that point, Karen, of what both of you all are making, even the minister blaming a deceased minister. You know, we've seen what transpired between the Minister of Works and Transport and the Minister of Public Utilities over road conditions. They're blaming one another as well. You know, so it seems as though the people who are in charge of managing Trinidad and Tobago, the people who are in charge of governing Trinidad and Tobago, it is quite surprising to me that none of them are responsible for what we're in. None of them are responsible for the situation in Trinidad and Tobago, what we're facing. I don't know how that is possible, where the individuals who are charged with overseeing the welfare and well-being of a nation are never the ones that are responsible. It's everybody else who are responsible. I don't understand it, but that's just how politics works. That's just how things are in Trinidad and Tobago. And quite frankly, if ministers are blaming each other, and one particular minister has the audacity to blame a deceased minister, as Karen said, he can't even defend himself. He can't speak for himself.
And I think that's a lot more relevant than we think.
Very, very much relevant. It goes to show you that this minister has not one clue of what he is doing. And the mere fact that the Prime Minister, up until this point, has allowed certain individuals to remain in that position, he doesn't care about Trinidad and Tobago, you know. He cares about ensuring that his friends are in positions where they benefit. His friends being Colin Imbert, his friends being Fitzgerald Hines, and his friends being Rohan Sinanan, etc., etc., etc. That's what the Prime Minister cares about. Because if he really cared about Trinidad and Tobago, and if he was really a true leader, if he really had leadership skills and qualities, then after, as Parliament opened on Monday, you would have seen fresher, younger, brighter faces in that Parliament standing up. But to continue to hear from Colin Imbert, Fitzgerald Hines, Camille Robinson Regis, Rohan Sinanan, I don't even know where the Minister of Labour is. Does anybody know if Stephen McClatchy is still in Trinidad? Or where the Minister of Agriculture is? Wow.
Oh yeah, that's a good question about the Minister of Agriculture. At a time when economists are all energy, diversification with agriculture. That's like the #2 topic from economists, right? Only because energy, obviously, tomorrow is going to give us more money tomorrow than agriculture. But agriculture is the #2 topic. I'd just like to point out, since it's already on me. This is where, you know, I have said that the UNC is a very top-down, centralized model. That has its negatives. But this is where we see the negatives of the other side, where I would say that the PNM is a bit more democratic and is not necessarily centrally controlled, and that has caused us to ask questions. Well, and this might be the negatives of it, where ministers could have power struggles against each other, where one minister could blame another minister and pass the buck on publicly. I'm not sure if we would see that in the other party for better or worse, and I do wonder, and this might lead us to our next topic, to what extent is there internal conflict in the government, in cabinet?
I'm not putting you down here at all, right? But
can I just say,
let Karen go. I think she has
hold on, Karen, very quickly, if I may just say, and forgive me. I'm very surprised. I'm not putting Sean on there. I'm very surprised at him because Sean is a smart individual, and the mere fact that he can sit on this platform and say that the PNM is more democratic. Hold on. If for 1 second you think Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley is governing with democracy in that party compared to the United National Congress.
Keaton, 2% is more than 1%. Right?
Can I just
2% is more than 1%. It's still very small.
Lies, damn lies, and statistics.
Exactly.
Karen.
Okay, can I just say, having been in government and having some idea of how it operates, especially some of the key players, some people, especially if you are not an MP but you're a senator, you know tomorrow morning he can remove you. And people get very attached to positions because when they no longer have it, it's because they're being blacklisted, which means it's not just losing your position unless you go very nicely, like the Minister of Agriculture, and make up some fairy tale about missing your family. Unless you're willing to say that, they are going to blacklist you and you're going to pay the price. So I'm very sorry, you've gotten it quite wrong, Keita. I mean, I'm Sean, very, very wrong.
Okay.
He has a tight rein on that thing, and he has, you don't know, look at the people he has around him. You just look at who he has doing his work for him. Those are specifically chosen for whatever reason, which you and I do not know, but we can just guess. And the others turn their thing, pretending they do not see, because if they open their mouths and voice anything, like Robert LeHunt did you can just say adios, goodbye, not only to your position in cabinet, but also to your position in the party. So don't ever fool yourself that the control Colin Imbert in particular, because I was in government with him, Colin Imbert in particular has over that cabinet.
That was my point. To me, one party control is centralized more on one person, whereas the other party, the control is persons. The control is persons. It's not, it's not a free democracy and they'll just accept whatever.
You better believe it.
But there are more people on the top and they don't always have the same agenda. Okay. That's more or less what I'm saying.
Okay, I hear you.
But they're keeping it to themselves.
Yeah, and I hear you. Because
for the most part, but every now and then it leaks out.
Because if you think that Kamala Prasad-Visas is really the one who is leading and controlling the United National Congress, you had to put on your spectacles. The other aspect is, very quickly before we go, you hear it all the time from I think the Minister of Health is a prime example and gives you hints as to what's really taking place. Every time, every other phrase he uses is the Honorable Prime Minister and thanks to the honor, because he has to. I don't think he has to. This man was not walking yesterday. He woke up this morning. It's a miracle thanks to the Honorable Prime Minister. That's what happens. This man wasn't seen yesterday. I don't know.
He actually said that?
This morning.
That's very North Korean.
This morning,
I think he would have been Jesus.
This morning his family bought him contact lenses.
That's very North Korean.
Thanks to the Honorable Prime Minister. No, but you hear it all the time.
He actually says things like that?
Oh God, I'm using examples. He just, every single thing that he says, the falling praise is the Honorable Prime Minister.
But you know what you hear from other situations? Well, we need to get approval from the Ministry of Finance. That's what the other phrase is.
Hold on. Thanks to the Honorable Prime Minister. We take a break here on Talking Point. When we return, we'll continue the conversation.
Chantwell Vibes, a musical tribute to Andre Tanker, Saturday, September 24th, 2022, Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m. Featuring 3 Canal, Mavis John, Ataclan, Empress Ajay, Stacy Sobers, and panist Natasha Joseph. Tickets $300. Available at Crosby's Music Center, St. James. Extra Foods, Rima, Grand Bazaar, and Endeavour. Online at Island E-Tickets. Committee members at 678-2843 or 482-3111. Central Bank box office on the day of the event. Mart's Liquor Palace, Diego Marte Main Road, La Puerta. A musical tribute to Andre Tanker. Saturday, September 24th, 2022. Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Welcome back to Talking Point, folks, and we were just debating the analysis of the various political parties and how their command structure is. Interestingly enough, you know, if you analyze it, we might have been ironically debating the semantics of how we were communicating our points to each other, just as we were talking about how the failures of government communication.
Thanks to the Prime Minister.
Meanwhile, another political party, let's not leave them out, because this is the interesting situation of the day. We haven't heard from our colleague, Mrs. Karenia Seshera, about her thoughts on what's been going on in the THA, because Watson Duke, I can't say in Tobago, I believe he's not in Tobago right now. And one of the most recent things to come out of that potential power struggle there, we have not necessarily seen it all the way through just yet, is that Duke threatened a vote of no confidence, and Farley said, bring it on. And I think the problem is, of course, now the vote might condemn either the target or the person who brought it up, because it will reveal where the support in the party lies. It's an interesting conundrum. Karen, I've been saying this week that to me, I don't know of any other situation in a Westminster-type government, or maybe even in any, maybe even in any government, really. I'm not too sure about the American political system, where the party leader is not the government executive leader. And because of the power sharing and the difference in personalities and styles, this clash probably was inevitable. And I'm actually wondering if we should be amazed that it took as long as it did for things to break down.
Well, you know, maybe I am maybe showing some partiality in terms of the leadership styles of both. But I think the country has had enough of the Rowley type of leadership, of the, you know, the bullying, the abusive and abrasive manner. He may not agree with that, but that is the sense that people have. So I think they welcome Farley Augustine's manner, who seems, despite his youth, to be centered, calm, reasoned in his approach. And I think he had a lot to do with his support, in my view, at least for the PDP's doing so well. On the other hand, with Watson Duke, in my respectful opinion, seems to be a continuum of a Rowley type of politics. And I think the country has had its fill of it. You know, he's showing you who he is, but more than that, he's also showing you that he seems to be enamored of things material. I mean, I was aghast when I saw the picture of him in the Hyatt with his wife and children dressed up as they were going to some regal ball. What message were you sending? And the way that he dresses, the things that he, the spectacles, the gold chain, the clothing, the car, it seems that he's very much enamored of material things, which is not a good signal for someone seeking political office. Mm-hmm. So to come to the specific question you're asking, I guess it has come to where it has come to. I mean, it cannot continue with a struggle between the two. And I think that Farley Augustine did make an error, in my respectful opinion, in his response initially to Watson Duke, very crude and abrasive attack on him, and he should have met with him, spoken to him about the matter, and then come back to the public and say, we have spoken on the matter, we to looking at resolving this issue in the interest of the party. And he also, as he expressed today, said he himself, that is Farley Augustine, asked to give a better account of the $400,000 that he says that was gifted to persons who were not sent to New York on a THA mission, but will be assisted in their thing. He needs to give a better account of how that money was disbursed if he wants to maintain.
Folly Augustine should not have responded in the manner in which he did. I said that yesterday on the program. But I will also add that what Folly Augustine did yesterday is now putting Watson Duke in a position where he challenged him to bring forward a motion of no confidence against him within the walls of the THA. And he says, I promise that if the motion is successful, I will resign as the Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly. However, if it fails, you, Mr. Watson Duke, are to resign as Deputy Chief Secretary. So I think, you know, Folly Augustine, that particular response was fine, because I think what it does now is that instead of going for a public dispute and going for the jugulars as Watson Duke has been, and this lady Kezel Jackson, whom honestly is just, I don't know, she's the kind of politician that we don't need. Young individual, and I hope she would have brought about some change. She's the kind of politician that you don't want or need. But quite frankly, Sean, by stating, bring that motion of no confidence, Folly Augustine's response was, to me, perfect. It puts Watson Duke in a position now, because remember, Watson Duke's aim is to hold on to whatever power and authority he has. It fuels his ego because he is a loose cannon. And, as I said, he's doing a disservice to Tobago. But let's see how Watson Duke responds. Because if Folly is so confident, to me it sounds as though Folly is very confident, there is a possibility that Watson Duke will lose his position as Deputy Chief Secretary. And where does it go now? What does Watson Duke know? I no longer am PSA President. I'm no longer Deputy Chief Secretary. I basically have nothing. You know, so let's see what happens from here.
Success is not always a measure of ability, because there are a lot of factors that go into success: opportunity, luck, support from other people, right? And
government.
In this case, Karen said it best, you know, and Dr. Shane Mohammed also said it. To what extent was Watson Duke elected, and to what extent was it because he had a good slate around him, good deputy political leaders, of whom he has now all abandoned? The only one that he has not is the yes woman in Trinidad, which is ironic because we're speaking about Tobago politics and she's not even from Tobago. So much for Watson Duke caring about autonomy. Anyway.
But also add to that, Sean, how he lost that election in August the year before.
Exactly. Right? When Tobago is ready to move on to the PNM, the best he could do was come now, man. And then he had to, there's a reason why he had to say, don't worry, I'm not going to be Chief Sec. Now,
it's true.
I think at the end of the day, this situation exposed a lot of Watson Duke's shortcomings. And I'm not talking about the ones that we might have inferred or that might be implied or we might have thought, whether rightfully or wrongfully, from his time as a union leader. First of all, what is his latest volley? Just before he threatened a motion of no confidence, what would he say? He would say, well, you failed at creating jobs. Well, if you understand economics, Mr. Duke, you would realize that you can't just make jobs out of thin air while trying to undergo major economic recovery and clean up a bureaucratic mess of a government body having too many employees, being bloated, right? When the THA is the main employer of the island, and you have to start figuring that out, that's not necessarily going to be a job-creating scenario. But you have to figure it out, right?
He's still speaking from the position of
a union leader. So that's economics and governance. And Dr. Shane Mohammed also mentioned the initial issue with sending resources to these performers who were not there on a THA-sponsored mission was also about governance and proper procedure, which unfortunately Farley does have questions himself to answer for, as both you and Karen and Keaton have pointed out. But I think what also exposed Watson Duke is his lack of political acumen. He's a union leader. He knows how to be a union leader. But Farley, basically, by turning around the vote of no confidence on him, because this is not a situation where the opposition leader is putting a vote of no confidence on a member of the government or the Speaker of the House or whatever. No. You're in your party, right? And publicly speaking, right now, it's a debate between two people. right? So
But,
obviously, if your vote does not go through, that heavily implies that you don't have support yourself. So
this is what I'm saying. Let's see his response.
No, but I think Watson Duke, sorry Karen, I think Watson Duke might not have even considered the fact, what happens if this turns against me? I'm not going to be safe after this. Karen?
Okay, can I just say this, and this is purely from a political perspective, but that's what it matters when people are voting. I believe that our assessment, our three of us, that the reason why Watson Duke was successful because he had a team behind him that people had confidence in. Dr. B. Israel, Fali Augustine, they seemed calm, measured, and really the kind of politician that the country is looking for. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. He has shown us in no uncertain terms that if we put him there, we are going to get a continuation of what we say we don't want in the political styling that is of that of Dr. Rowley. Secondly, is affinity for things material with that display that has never left my mind in Hyatt with his wife and his children dressed in regalia is an indication that you have to be very concerned with a politician who seems to have an affinity or a proclivity to things material, and we don't need that in the country because that is one of the main issues, issue of corruption. And so what I will say is this. I think that we've had 2 Tobago presidents, prime ministers, A.N.R. Robinson, so it's not unheard of for us to have a third. And I think if I had to bet, put my bet on a leader in these circumstances, apart from his youth, and if something else goes wrong, my bet goes with Fali Augustine, with his team that he has at this point in time, but certainly not with Watson Duke. He's showing you who he is. So don't get upset if he screams and shouts anything and gets on bad and wassy. Don't be surprised. He's telling you who he is. It's like a guy who meets a girl and he tells you who he is. He's telling you who he is, and then you're getting shocked when you get married. Oh, you know, he's so and so. But didn't he tell you that's who he is?
Two quick things. One, reports out of Tobago, and they could be wrong or biased, but reports out of the public seems to not support Watson Duke's actions, including people in Roxborough, his seat, and another deputy, not just Faith and Farley, but also Alicia Roberts-Patterson. So that's 3 deputies. It makes me wonder, the Tobago arm of the PDP, the main arm, what's going on?
Let me just use this as an example before we go for the break. If the people of Tobago felt very much disenfranchised and really did not appreciate, and to a certain extent does not appreciate the Prime Minister, who himself is a Tobagoan and who they said has let down Tobago, then a man who shares similar characteristics and qualities which we're seeing in Watson Duke, how do you think the people of Tobago will react against him? Watson Duke, the ball is in your court. Let's see how you play it. We'll be right back after this.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Sinclair. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Baby dies after choking on mashed potatoes. Supermarkets Association says time to make food security practical. Man granted bail for sexual assault. Ministry of Health receives equipment from PAHO. And internationally, Queen Elizabeth II to lay in state today. Now for the details. We begin on a tragic note. An 11-month-old baby has died, allegedly after choking on mashed potatoes. According to reports, the incident occurred in Manzanilla. An autopsy is expected to determine the cause of death. Supermarkets Association President Rajiv Dipti says it is time to make food security practical. He was speaking on the issue with state media on Tuesday.
Because we've seen our governments take a proactive role, we're here to say that we're here to support that.
So our next steps would be to really get involved in some interactive missions across the various islands and take the conversations that we've already had even further.
A 31-year-old Barataria man was granted bail in the sum of $100,000 by a Tunapuna magistrate when he appeared in court charged with sexual penetration of a minor. The accused was charged with the offense and the matter adjourned till October 10th. The accused was arrested on September 9th following a report made to the police about an alleged sexual encounter he had with a female minor between the period October 5th to October 16, 2021. On Tuesday, Health Minister Terence Dialsing was on hand to receive a donation of medical equipment from PAHO WHO's representative, Dr. Erica Wheeler. The items presented were 30 oxygen concentrators and accessories, RDT Standard Q COVID-19 AG Rapid Test Kit and Control, and CR 2003 CR AG Lateral Flow Assay. This equipment would be utilized in the ministry's continued fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. The Ministry of Health continues to take the necessary steps to safeguard the health of the population. On to some international news now. Large queues are forming along Albert Embankment as people wait for the Queen's lying-in state to begin. Her coffin remains at Buckingham Palace ahead of a procession to Westminster Hall later. Prince William and Harry, along with King Charles III, will walk behind the coffin as it is carried on a gun carriage. During the procession, guns will be fired at Hyde Park and Big Ben will toll. Hundreds of thousands of people are expected to file past the coffin to pay their respects, with a huge policing operation in place. The Queen's funeral will be held on Monday. Well, that was your news of the hour on WESN. I am Denise St. Clair. Thanks for watching.
Chantwell Vibes, a musical tribute to Andre Tanker, Saturday, September 24th, 2022, Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m. Featuring Three Canal, Mavis John, Ataclan, Empress Ajay, Stacy Sobers, and panist Natasha Joseph. Tickets, $300. Available at Crosby's Music Center, St. James. Extra Foods, Arima, Grand Bazaar, and Endeavour. Online at Island E-Tickets. Committee members at 678-2843 or 482-3111. Central Bank box office on the day of the event. Mart's Liquor Palace, Diego Marte Main Road, La Puerta. A musical tribute to Andre Tanker. Saturday, September 24th, 2022. Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN Content Capital. Well, Sean Michael Small and myself are very pleased that Karen Inez Teixeira joins us on a Wednesday. We get a little bit more educated every time she presents herself on the program. And also, it's always good looking at a very pretty face because quite frankly, looking at each other is not, sometimes it's a bit...
that was so kind of you.
But I would just like to point out...
I would just say thank you, though.
Not all, yes, you can thank him, Karen, but I would just like to point out that not all sufferings are equal, okay?
Hey, that's very much true. That's why I take off my glasses before coming on.
Exactly. I unfortunately see that with full 2020.
Oh, God, what is wrong with the two of you?
Welcome back to Talking Points. Let's open up the phone lines. You've heard our voices this morning for an hour on a variety of topics. And now it's time for you to contribute to the conversation. Remember, this is the only way that we will progress, is that if everybody comes together, shares their opinion, and then we can all try and find a way to move forward. The national conversation is important to our future. So the phone lines are on the screen. Call in and join us on the program this morning. We look forward to hearing from you. Lady, and gentlemen, you know, or ladies and gentlemen, to the viewers who are joining us this morning, quite frankly, look at what's going on. It seems as though it's a vicious cycle that's taking place. For example, I think last year, you know, after the PDP election, and even a couple of months after the victory that they saw for the THE elections, I kept saying that that is a prime example that Trinidad and Tobago should be looking at as to how you can have fresh, young minds with level heads. At least it came across at that time, with level heads, the skills that are necessary, the leadership qualities that are necessary to actually try and turn things around. I was saying it at that time. Now, it seems as though a cycle of politics, of which we've seen many a times in Trinidad and Tobago, is now plaguing the THE. I hope that is sorted out soon. For the people of Tobago, and by extension, the people of Trinidad and the nation as a twin island republic. Caller on the line with us from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen and ladies.
Good morning.
When I listened to the Prime Minister speak, when he came back there on the gas situation, and I find it was mentioned so, in my opinion, so nonchalantly, something that serious. I was so worried because I know we have an issue with gas, but to put it over like that after the strip is real worrying to me, and I think Trinidad and Tobago really needs to check itself and understand that because we have nothing else, you know.
Yes, we do.
After that energy, we have no other industry. We don't have a functioning tourism industry where we can fall back on. We don't. Our manufacturing industry not big enough to rest on. There is nothing put together that we can say if we don't have energy, we could fall back on these things. I have to blame in most parts, and this is seriously the population for this, because we have been allowing these governments to come forward one after the next and to not put emphasis on diversification. We've been hearing diversification for 25 years. To me, the two people that tried to diversify this country, firstly was Dr. Eric William, and secondly was Patrick Manning. Nobody else. Now, that is that on that point. My other point quickly is, I listened to you all talk about Dr. Rowley comparing Duke and Rowley. I mean, everybody has their opinion. You will have your opinion. You may not agree with mine. But I find that was a great disrespect for Dr. Rowley to compare Watson Duke with Dr. Rowley, in my opinion. That is my opinion. I mean, I know you all won't agree with me.
No, I hear you, caller.
To compare Watson Duke and his behavior and what he has shown us is all the time from since then. Tobago people look for that, in my opinion, because they, just like people in Trinidad, we saw who Watson Duke was, and they wanted to get rid of the PNM, so they decided they're going to put him there. Let them take that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller.
Well, caller, I'd just like to reiterate the point. But they weren't getting Watson Duke as the chief secretary.
But hold on, caller. I hear what you're stating, and I don't necessarily disagree
with you. They
didn't
put him there.
Because I want you to understand the point that I made when I made that comparison. There are certain characteristics and qualities that Watson Duke possess that I've also seen in Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, and that I have seen in other politicians as well. You know, so it's not a direct comparison of each other, because quite frankly, this behavior and whatnot, I don't see the Prime Minister always getting on like that, don't get me wrong, but there are certain things that I have seen which, as you just mentioned, I might have that as an opinion, you might have it as an opinion, but at the end of it all, thank you very much for your contribution. We have a caller on the line with us from Claxton Bay. Good morning, caller.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everybody there. That guy was so on point. You know, And many of the problems that we have in today is because we are not looking inwards. We are not checking ourselves and seeing, hey, we is the problem, boy. We paying the same people over and over to do the same thing.
Yes,
we know it's thief-free. We know it's corruption. But wait, well, how much of us coming out and saying, well, yeah, boy, let me come out together and do something. You can't get the Indians and Africans to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you very much, caller, for your contribution. You know, honestly, that other point that the caller from San Fernando made in relation to he blames ourselves, which the point was just reiterated by the caller from Claxonby. I share that as well. I often say that you could blame the government when they're there for 5 years, but at the end of the day, who puts them there? Is our finger that we dip in that red ink at the end of the day. That says a lot. But ladies and gentlemen, I think we missed one point. The Prime Minister referenced a graph. He said he didn't have the graph and he wanted the Minister of Energy was supposed to work with it. So something to that extent, he didn't have the graph. But he mentioned that if certain things are not done now by 2026, we're going to run dry. That year is very significant, because as I'm thinking about it, elections are due, in 2026 it's going to run dry. Elections are due in 2025. Elections are due in 2025. The Prime Minister made that statement. I didn't see the graph. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I hope it's released. But whoever the next government is, right, will say a lot. Because I think Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley said, this is my last term. You know, this is my last term. I am going up for leadership of the PNM, because how could I be Prime Minister without being the political leader of a party, of my party? That's how I got in the first place. 2026 is a very, very important year, not only for a statement, but it's also the first year of a new government, whether it be a PNM-led government, or a UNC-led government, or an NTA-led government, a PDP, MSA, whatever it may be. That's a very important year.
I think as we have the time, I'd like to go to the second comment where he disagreed with the comparison. And I understand, caller, why you would disagree. And I don't necessarily fault you. However, I do understand why my colleagues did make the comparison. Now, to be fair, I actually think, to some extent, I'll agree with the caller. And this is where we have to be able to look at things in a nuance. I think that Duke, as Keaton said, does have some of the same tendencies that Dr. Keith Rowley has. However, I would go a little bit further and say quite a few Trinidadian politicians, or quite a few politicians, Trinbagonian politicians, the ones who are happy to kind of act, play to the crowd, play to the base, they tend to do that. I do think, though, that Watson Duke takes it a step further than the others, right? And that's from his union leader days.
Can I just say before your next caller, number one, in terms of Watson Duke and the comparison made, I remember the Prime Minister, when he became Prime Minister, everybody was feeling really well, very good that he said he was Prime Minister of all people, and he gave a conciliatory speech and everybody felt breather, sigh of relief that we're going to get a different type of Dr. Rowley that people had heard of and seen in Parliament. That's one. And number two, you haven't had Watson Duke, but the marriage hasn't happened. So you don't know what he's doing, but he's giving you, telegraphing his personality. So you have to understand, if he's not in power and he's not in a position to make it, and he's behaving in the manner that he is behaving, then one can only expect that when he sits in the, if he were to sit in the corridors of power, just as with Dr. Rowley, you will see a different side of him. And Dr. Rowley has said some terrible things, which I won't even repeat because they're not things that one wants to repeat. And I think people are afraid of him, actually, his own ministers.
I agree with you with that. I think the worst thing that you can do is give Watson Duke power. I honestly think that's the thing. But we have
I think he'll be more responsible.
We have a call on the line with us from Sugarners. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Good morning.
Sorry about that, Professor.
No problem. You seem to concentrate a lot on how people express themselves. I don't pay much attention to that. What I'm interested in is what they do and what they don't do. And our problem with our politicians is they do not follow the rules, they do not do what they're supposed to do, especially with annual administrative reports and so forth. One of the persons who a lot of people criticized his method was Dr. Eric Williams. But nobody could fault him in his first 10 years. He did his job. And he moved this country forward as regards these fellows. Regarding Tobago, you talk about Farley supposed to respond to allegations. He has no duty to carry on a running conversation with the press. What that should be taking place is in the House of Assembly. Somebody should move some movement, I think they're going to do it now, to bring whatsoever occurred there out in the open. Because one thing about the public service, you have a paper trail. Everything is done, supposed to be documented, so you should have no problem. And this morning, people, you had a very top Tobago National in the Express telling you, he asked a very pertinent question. How was that company selected to get this amount of largest? And I would really like to know. But we also hear this is not the first time that they went. Of course, nobody said whether it was with public funds, because that was during the PNM time. And apparently they had a big problem with the bills. And apparently they went back by the same place, and the lady said, no, it's nobody doing anything like it. So you want, in fact, with the money involved, as I have said yesterday, I repeat it, what I see is a criminal investigation. And I would like to hear your guest speaker on that. You see? And the final point about the president taking her own advice.
Very quickly.
Leader of the opposition. I don't see what you're talking about.
Me neither.
You seem to blame the president for the withdrawal of the merit list, and she raised something in Parliament, and she was defeated. So that should be she and that matter. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Have any questions?
I will comment on the opposition leader's statements as regards to the president tomorrow. But I've delayed it deliberately because I try my best to get through the more important things rather than the stupidity of some in Trinidad and Tobago. But I hear you, Professor, in relation to the investigation, because we need to know exactly how this group was selected, but at the same time, the allegations made by Kezell Jackson, that also needs to be looked into. Because if that is the case, not only is there, I don't know if there's wrongdoing on the part of Farley Augustine. That is what an investigation will tell us. And if there is, Watson Duke is also to blame. Because Kezell Jackson said he was aware of it. He became aware of it. He knew that he was aware that there was some wrongdoing taking place, but he chose to turn a blind eye, basically. So this is why you look at it all around. By the way, how people express themselves, that's something that they do. You know, that is something that they do. But I hear you in terms of actions. Leadership at the end of the day, actions and words matter. Actions and words matter. Because today the Prime Minister could come and tell me, the economy is doing fantastically well. We have oil and gas until 2027, and then tomorrow we have oil and gas until 2026. And then the next day, 2030. Oh, hold on. Sorry, we ran out 12 years ago. This is what I'm saying. Communication at the end of the day is extremely important, and it ties in with actions. And that's why they take, minutes at any meeting, by the way.
Just a point, I find this interesting. There's one of the news articles in the Newsday. A man said he has embarrassed. This is his comment. This is his opinion on Duke's comments. Duke has embarrassed the whole world with this situation, and a lot of people are also embarrassed. He said up until recently he was a staunch Duke supporter. The communication at the end of the day, I think, played a great deal to give this individual such a strong opinion for someone who used to, or claims to used to support Duke and no longer supports him. And the irony is, Professor, that while the government could do, the opposition and other parties can do less, if anything. And in the case of the opposition, not much at all. So how